I'm Doctor Squee. This is my show. Tonight, we're very excited to welcome back a friend of the show. Last time he was here, he was speaking to us about crop circles. This time it's Bitcoin. He's going to tell us all about this exciting new frontier in the financial world and how it's really taking seed and how it's really starting to take over some of the institutions which we've come to know and hate from the banking sector over the years. Please welcome, with his new documentary, Bitcoin, A Field Guide, Mr. Darcy Weir. How are you doing tonight, Darcy? Or today, this morning, whatever it might be in your neck of the world. Oh, we've lost your sound again. Sorry, sir. Nope, still can't hear you. Darcy, I'm sorry, I can't hear you at all.
Can you hear me?
Hey, I've got you back now.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Well, thank you
No
for
worries.
having me, doctor. I'm ready for my prescription.
Hey, I've got to remember that for the show. So, sir, last time you were here, as I alluded to there, you talked to us about crop circles. Prior to that, you worked on a documentary about Bigfoot. So you've gone from things which some people question if they exist to something which definitely exists, but a lot of us don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the nicest possible way. I'm starting to think you just like being contrary.
Well, I mean, I like a story that's very odd, and
Yeah.
right now the interesting thing is in terms of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, they're becoming mainstream. So when I first started looking into this back in 2018 is when I began filming this documentary. A friend of mine was invested in Bitcoin prior to that, back in 2016 and 17. I think he was starting to accumulate. And he'd even reached out to me and told me he was interested in buying it at what then was perceived as a very high price. It was about $1,600 or $1,500. And I advised them, don't do that. That sounds like a huge waste of money. Not knowing really what the promise of the technology was. And here we are today, 2022. It's hovering around $20,000 per Bitcoin, and it could go lower. It could go a little higher. It could trade sideways from here for a very long time. But the thing is, in my mind, after investigating for the past 5 years, I'm convinced that it's a technology that's here to stay, and it's really going to change the world in terms of people deciding whether they're going to hold fiat currency or a digital currency like Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, I went to the story because it was odd, but I think history will prove itself that this is not really an odd thing. This is something that could be perceived as being mainstream pretty soon.
I mean, yesterday alone, funnily enough, as we do this interview, Kevin Smith was announcing that his anthology film Kilroy Was Here is going to be released as a non-fungible token with
An
the
NFT,
rights within it. They've moved into this because I know you touch upon this. I know it's not the main focus of the documentary, but it seemed so apropos of what we were going to be talking about, because he what he's done is he's releasing the film through this way. I need to look up exactly how that all works and how you kind of get it. But like he was saying, that part of the deal was that he's included the character or the look of Kilroy that they've come up with for this as part of the token. So people can submit their own Kilroy films for the sequel. And that just seems a really great example of how this new technology is going to work.
Yeah.
And what its potential is.
Yeah. So, just to jump into NFTs and what the promise is of this technology. So a non-fungible token is a new way for content creators to basically own their own digital rights management over their content. So, DRM became a wildly enterprise popular sort of legal rights technology from the days of Apple launching the iPod and the iPhone and creating this massive iTunes marketplace where creators of music and even films and that type of digital media can be bought from their iTunes store, and then that digital rights management is encoded into your your store's account, so people can then show, okay, I own these songs for the rest of my life, or this movie or whatever for the rest of my life, and it stays on the iTunes store. It just syncs up to my phone, and that proves that I own this and or rented it or whatever. Now with non-fungible tokens, you're basically taking that same sort of digital rights management concept, but it's built into this new blockchain technology, which is the same sort of blockchain technology that Bitcoin, Ethereum, and many of these other cryptocurrencies they employ. And blockchain technology essentially allows for users to do person-to-person transactions, and built into the actual cryptocurrency itself is the accounting system, is the records of how the coin was created, who owns it now, who's owning it in the past, and the amount of it and the value of it, so on and so forth. So non-fungible tokens uses this open ledger technology, meaning that people can see live who created the content originally, who owns the content now. And an interesting thing about that too is that if you create this new content, you can write into the law of that content, into the code of that content, that even though you're going to sell this content, Kevin Smith sells this film built as an NFT to his viewers. When they buy it, it shows that they own it, but the original creator technically still owns it. You're just kind of holding that content. And if you turn around, decide to sell that NFT again in the future, the original content creator can make a royalty on that later sale. And that's what we've seen with all of these digital pieces of art, like Bored Apes Yacht Club, or Crypto Punks, that really blew up, and were being traded back and forth on these platforms like OpenSea, which are NFT trading art platforms. What happens is the original content creators still sometimes making transactional income from the original art, but every time it trades hands, he's getting fractional denominations of those transactions, and the new owners are making obviously large amounts from reselling it too.
Yeah.
So really, this new content creation marketplace has taken off, and NFTs are, I think, we see NFTs proving themselves to be very valuable in gaming marketplaces on PCs and phones. People are able to play these NFT video games and trade NFTs and sell NFTs, and uh, improve the value of the NFTs through playing the game and sort of upskilling and upgrading the NFTs. So that is a whole new trend. Then we have content creators that are just digital artists making digital paintings. And then we also have guys like Kevin Smith that are creating their films. And I got approached by some content creators that were like trying to get me to advise them on how they would launch their NFT projects, which involve art. But what they really were trying to do was launch this new universe. And essentially, that's what you're talking about with Kevin Smith. He's trying to launch a universe with his new film. And when he launches that universe, he will, kind of be a owner of that universe in terms of some of the content that gets spawned out of his initial launch. So the upcoming content creators that want to make a sequel to that film, like you were saying before, they will launch their own, and he will approve it probably, and he'll get a cut of that, and he'll watch this sort of universe grow and expand and become something bigger and bigger, which is, look, that's what we already have with a bunch of these sort of content creation enterprises that already exist. Look at Disney, right? They have the Star Wars universe, and Marvel has many action comic universes that they've launched in media, films, video games, and art, and then just stories, right? And then you also have just guys like Ridley Scott that created the Alien universe originally back in the 80s, right? And he came back to that universe and created Prometheus and Alien Covenant. And some people even say that in some ways Blade Runner is part of that universe. It's just an Earth-based story going on in the same time, that same science fiction time. And so is Raised by Wolves, right? So if you think about it, these content creators with a non-fungible token technology, they can launch their universe and they can watch it grow, and they can profit from it, and also, foster content creation for other users that are playing and exploring this universe.
Yeah, and the interesting thing which they brought up yesterday at the launch was the idea that if they had tied this to some website or some specific kind of organization, basically, then if that organization goes under, your content goes under with it. You're kind of like right to kind of get to your content again if you lose it for any, whatever reason. Whereas with the non-fungible token, it's directly yours. It's not like beholden to, like iTunes, for instance, all this music which is stored there. If something happens to that, you lose your music.
Exactly. And that's the other thing about the crypto space, is that we do see a lot of upstarts, small companies that are, excuse me, getting over a bit of COVID.
Oh.
But people are seeing these small technology companies that essentially are trying to offer a solution to a problem in the economy or in a technological space with their blockchain token. We're seeing a lot of those companies right now in this downturn, this economic downturn and this crypto downturn. Some of them are going belly up because they built technologies that were an experiment, and they've collapsed. That experiment has run its course and seemed to have shown vulnerabilities that they didn't quite anticipate this early in their development. So the same thing is happening in the non-fungible token space. We've seen projects that have come out that look like they offered promise as a new universe that was being launched, and then things could happen. There could be exploits where hackers came in and stole funds from the underlying project, which then crashed the non-fungible token and the actual value of everything. And some cases, these small startup businesses have gotten greedy, and they knew that they didn't know actually how to continue to facilitate this innovation in their projects and continue the growth. So they stole the underlying money that came in to seed and fund the project, and it's considered what's called a rug pull. So you've seen that too, and the whole crypto universe, the whole crypto space as a new technological space and a new business and ecosystem is something that's really kind of like the Wild West right now. And we're going to see probably, hopefully, some government regulation that comes to it so that people's funds and their investments are protected a bit better.
And do you think that threat is any better or worse than the threat which we get from, cyber attacks from any currency?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, fiat currencies can be subjected to the same cyber attacks that have been going on. In fact,
and just for anyone who's not familiar with the term, fiat just basically means the regular currencies like dollar, pounds, whatever.
That's right. So the currencies that we've been operating under for the better part of the past like 60 to 80 years, globally have been under attack by all kinds of exploits, whether that's somebody just taking a gun and going to a bank and saying, empty your vaults so I can have your riches. That's been a normal way, but with the rise of this digital age, we're communicating over computers and such. Savvy hackers and developers have been able to crack into through the security of digital institutions, banks, and steal funds, and that's something we're always going to have to deal with. Banking systems have been using really high security encryption for protecting your user data and protecting accounts on the back end. They use usually 256-bit AES technology. But in the crypto space, if you look at Bitcoin, for example, that blockchain network and each Bitcoin token is encrypted with 256-bit hash SHA technology, SHA. And that is the highest encryption that we've known to date. You actually cannot hack it. People are saying that quantum computers could hack it. But if one might note or do their research, quantum computers are not cheap. It's not like going and buying a cell phone or a desktop or even a server computer. Quantum computers are kind of like the original computers that we had at the advent of the computer era. They fill up a whole room, kind of like a server farm, and they're ultra cooled with hydrogen and such, and massive heat sinks to try and keep them from burning up and breaking down. So they're definitely not an easy technology to access. And the other cool thing about Bitcoin and these other digital technologies is that they're encrypted, but they're also being upgraded constantly. And you can't do that with fiat currency, really. With Bitcoin, there are companies that are coming to solve this security problem of maybe a quantum computer hacking it. And I can't remember the company right now, but it's already developing quantum security for Bitcoin.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's my fault. I went hot with the movie and everything, but to boil it down, to kind of take it down to basics though, for anyone who's joining us who isn't familiar with Bitcoin, or cryptocurrencies, obviously Bitcoin's just one of the brands, but what exactly is it? What's your way of explaining to someone who knows nothing about these digital currencies?
Sure. So if you have money right now, it's usually fiat currency. And that is a bunch of numbers on a computer screen in an accounting system that's run by the traditional banks that are running around the world today. And you're gaining that money through your work, your proof of work, going to produce content like this for yourself, or maybe your 9 to 5 where you're building technology, or you're pouring coffees for people, whatever. when it comes to Bitcoin and some of these other digital currencies, they're cutting out the banking system and you are becoming your own bank. It's a person to person, a P2P network technology. All you need is a digital wallet set up to hold your cryptocurrency, your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, whatever that may be. And so if you have a digital wallet, I have a digital wallet, you want to sell me a service or you want to sell me a product, something tangible, we agree upon that, and then I'll say, okay, I'm going to transfer you 0.0001 of a Bitcoin that I have to pay for that. Let's say, just hypothetically.
And the several zeros and then a one is probably worth like 100 quid now for Bitcoin. It's insane the way it's
I
done.
haven't looked at it, but yeah, Bitcoin is worth quite a bit right now. And the reason why
something I just want to chuck in, just to, if nothing else, prove I did follow like at least most of the documentary.
Great. I appreciate that.
Well, what I loved about it, just to go from a slight tangent, is that I like the fact that the sort of like first half of the documentary felt like the basics of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and what it is, and then you bust into the different kind of things like non-fungible tokens. And then near the end, it got into the big leagues. I think that's the kind of thing which you have to maybe research a little bit, but it sort of does, like for more experienced people in the space, it's kind of like got the use there. So as you get more involved in it, you get to know more about it. It's got something in there for those people as well. But the one thing which I did like about it is that it's just peer to peer. It's like two people can access that currency as well each end.
Yeah, it's all about a new network technology essentially that's decentralized. It's not relying on the old centralized banking systems to complete financial transactions. That's how it sort of started with Bitcoin, but there's other development happening. And like I said, like you said, there's new technologies that are using the blockchain technology to offer new solutions to economic issues. And technology is all about really two things, right? Innovation and offering efficiency. So when you create an innovative product that is going to challenge an older product in terms of offering a faster or better solution for users, it's going to create efficiency and better value for you and me. And Bitcoin and these other cryptocurrencies are essentially doing that in certain opportunities or sectors in the economy. And Bitcoin essentially is a new banking money system that is more sound and more valuable than our current fiat and traditional banking systems. And we see that in real time based on the rising value of Bitcoin over time. So people,
and it's a closed shop with the amount that's printed as well, because this was the other thing which you compared to the traditional banking system, is that there is a set amount of Bitcoin. Say there's 1 million Bitcoin in the world, no matter how long it goes, there's 1 million, and if someone loses it, there's still 1 million, just some was lost, which increased the value of the rest. And that was kind of fascinating.
Yeah,
you can't print more Bitcoin in the way they print more money. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, like if you look at gold or diamonds or something like that, we perceive those to have a higher value because they're a precious metal that are typically hard to get, to find, and to extract. And then we have to synthesize them, and there's costs associated with that, right? With Bitcoin, there's a limited number of it in existence. Since the moment that it was coded into existence by the original developers, 21 million was ever the only amount that was ever going to be available in the ecosystem. Now, since its release over the years, people have created these digital wallets that I was talking about before. You could have and I can have to complete these transactions in a decentralized digital way. Some of these early wallet owners were millionaires, and they bought, millions or hundreds of thousands of these Bitcoin, and they died. They didn't pass on the wallet information to their loved ones, and so on. And so this created a loss on the network, meaning those Bitcoin or XRP or Ethereum are no longer available to be accessed. So that makes the total available amount out there in the ecosystem to be more limited. And when you're perceiving the value of something, if you want to go buy something and there's a limited quantity, a limited edition or whatever, the value of that's going to go up. We look at what's happening with inflation right now. We have a limited we have a limited amount of oil that's available because the invasion of Ukraine, and it's really unfortunate what's going on there. But this is also causing supposedly wheat food shortages to that part of the world, and so the value of wheat is going to go up around the world. And you look at Bitcoin. You look at what has happened in the traditional banking system that we're using today. COVID came around, and even before that, the governments were printing money like it was growing on trees, and it quite literally is a over saturated market right now, a money supply. So we created this massive amount of money, and we created a massive amount of debt, and the fiat dollar is backed by the perceived value that governments allow other governments to agree and believe it to be worth. And so Saudi Arabia goes to the United States and says, okay, we're going to trade our barrels of oil for your US dollar. And that perceives that the US dollar is actually more valuable than another basket of fiat currencies because people want to use that for their goods overall. But the problem right now is that people are discussing that due to what is happening in Eastern Europe right now, it really is marking the end of globalization, meaning that the United States is slowly becoming and their dollar and their economy is possibly being challenged as being a perceived powerhouse, because countries like Russia and maybe even China in the future are going to say, we don't want to take your US dollar. We don't care about your US dollar anymore. We prefer to trade with this or this. And that could be,
which is really interesting with China, given the amount which both America and the UK and quite a lot of other countries owe a big chunk of their economy to China, which kind of perplexes me how you can owe so much of your economy to a country and still claim yours is the dominant currency.
Yep. And China is one of these countries that's very close to launching their own digital currency, blockchain-based digital currency to the masses. And they're also at the same time attacking the validity of something like Bitcoin. If you look at their countrywide press releases, they're saying Bitcoin will go to being worth zero and all this stuff. And they're doing that for a very good reason, because they want their new digital currency that is modeled after something like Bitcoin to be more successful than the US dollar and Bitcoin. They want to have economic supremacy around the world. And I think they want to challenge the United States, in my opinion. So, of course, they're going to talk trash about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies because they're launching their own. So you have to look at what's happening in terms of innovation around the world and cryptocurrencies and crypto blockchain technology. And then you have to look at what's happening with fiat currency. And this documentary is kind of serving as an educational, it's a guide so people can kind of like understand a bit of this crypto universe and see where it's beginning and where it could go. And then also I'm trying to help people. I'm trying to maybe advise them against relying so much on fiat currencies because, um, you know, smarter people than myself have said that every fiat currency has always gone to zero. That is
Yeah,
a certainty.
and the amount of time was about 80 years. They quote, or it was something very close to what we're approaching with current currencies. A lot of them.
Well, what you're speaking to is that the Federal Reserve currencies usually last about 80 years. There
Yeah,
are fiat currencies that have only lasted 50 or
yeah,
25 years and then crashed. You look at Sri Lanka right now. Their economy is completely toast. You look at Venezuela. Look at their dollar. What's that worth? Nothing. You look at Turkey. Their economy is their dollar is hyperinflated. You look at Argentina, their dollar is hyperinflated. All these fiat currencies are literally knocking on death's door because they've run their course, and the fiat experiment is not a good experiment. You should really back the value of something with something that's provable, that is scarce, and has, with Bitcoin, it has a proof of work system, meaning each Bitcoin that is created is through computers solving algorithmic mathematical problems, which actually secure the network and allow transactions to happen at the same time, as well as people, facilitating their trade from wallet to wallet, let's say, right?
yeah.
So it is a hard money system based on the way that coins are created. There's value there, and the way that there can't be any more printed into existence. So it's a deflationary
Yeah,
currency, whereas fiat currencies are printed into infinity, and that is an inflationary currency. So we're actually seeing inflation happening because of what the fiat system actually is. It's a failed experiment.
can I just jump in with a question there? Because there were a couple of questions I wanted to get to about how this kind of goes into the mainstream. Because I can definitely see the potential. I can definitely see why it's so valuable to us in the future. There's a couple of things, like a couple of hurdles, which it seems to me, which you might have the answer for how we kind of overcome them. First one is with crypto being a closed shop. Like, so you've got how many billion you said there was of Bitcoin, for instance. As they become more scarce, the value of them goes up. How does someone know the relative worth of what they've got when the amount, the value of it can change so drastically?
So there's going to be um, there's going to be fluctuations in the price of Bitcoin and these other cryptocurrencies that are good quality cryptocurrencies. Some will
Yeah,
crash and go to zero. For sure. There's always going to be projects like that fail. Bitcoin, I'm not convinced it's ever going to go to zero. It's got first to market advantage. So it has the most widely known and the highest value network around the world right now. Every country you can pretty much buy it,
yeah,
almost every country in the world, right? And you can keep it in digital wallets on exchanges, or you can keep it in hardware wallets like Ledger that are connected to your computer, and you are literally your own bank holding your money right with you locally instead of at these institutions. And there will be, what do you call it? Um, Variable prices of Bitcoin, because there will be booms and busts. But in the long term, in the long run, people believe that, there will be a stabilization of the value of Bitcoin that will go up not so drastically, and go
yeah,
down not so drastically. And that's going to be based on, the simple reason is supply and demand. So we talked about the supply part of that equation, which is there's not a very large amount of supply. Demand is going to grow as people realize, I don't want to hold this fiat currency that is depreciating in value over time. I would rather hold on to a money, a digital currency that I can trade with, that is going up over time. If you look at the 5-year chart of Bitcoin, yes, it's had its peaks and valleys in value, but it is over time always accelerating in value.
Yeah.
So that is the one thing. I mean, if somebody buys in today at 20,000, it crashes to 10,000. If they're using it as money, it's not a good time to use it as a money system right now.
Yeah.
But if they're using it as a place to park their fiat money for the long term, as a safe place, in my opinion, this is not financial advice. This is just an educational show. I think that long term, if they're parking that $20,000 of fiat currency in 2 years from now, that might be worth a heck of a lot more than what you originally bought, because other people are piling in. Other people are sinking their fiat currencies from all around the world into this Bitcoin pool. And eventually, with development and more mainstream use of Bitcoin and other digital currencies, we may see people just transact on that network person to person, or through shopping sites, like possibly something like Amazon, or even on places like Craigslist, you can actually transact in cryptocurrencies right now. So you're going to see that development happen in retail and enterprise places in the future, where people will be able to transact on the cryptocurrency networks, and they won't have to change back to a fiat currency to pay for other things,
One of the ones which you mentioned, because something I'm kind of fascinated with is how it works in practical life. So if you have this cryptocurrency, say we're in a world where it's kind of got to that state where you're using it as currency, just like you would any other, it's kind of more stable on a day-to-day basis. How do you then kind of like, how do the mechanics of it work, of like buying it, of then trading it, all that kind of thing? One of the ones you mentioned in the documentary is PayPal, which as much as I was kind of very excited about all the new technology, it seems something nice and sort of like something we understood was PayPal. It sort of like seemed almost like an entry point people might be able to use, maybe.
Yeah. So if you have a PayPal account in the United States, you could technically, let's say you had $2,000, 2,000 US dollars in your PayPal account. You could buy $2,000, convert that to a smaller amount of Bitcoin, and hold your Bitcoin in your PayPal account. What happens on the back end is PayPal sells your US dollar for a denomination of Bitcoin, and then hold it for you. And then if you ever want to sell that back to fiat currency into your same PayPal account, on the back end, they're selling the Bitcoin and then refilling your trough of your bank, your wallet, with USD. Now, the interesting thing about these fractions of Bitcoin, if you can't own one whole Bitcoin, it's not a big deal, because, like I said, you can go beyond the decimal point 9 spaces for Bitcoin. So those fractions of a Bitcoin are called Satoshis. And I think in the future, you will be able to transact with smaller denominations of a Satoshi, because they're upgrading the Bitcoin network with what's called the Lightning Network technology. And if you use the Lightning Network, it's eventually going to get to a place where it's really, really, really cheap to complete transactions on the Bitcoin network. The gas fee will be cheap enough that it's inexpensive enough that you can buy those pair of shoes or buy a car or whatever, or buy a house maybe, I don't know. And you pay the gas fee, which will be smaller, and it'll actually be faster. So the Lightning Network is supposed to make it a quicker transaction. It settles quicker. By all means, if I want to send $1 million from this country I'm in now to Germany, to your wallet in the UK, your Bitcoin wallet, that will settle a hell of a lot quicker, and the gas fee, the transaction fee, will be a hell of a lot cheaper to do it from my wallet to your wallet on the Bitcoin network without the innovation of the Lightning Network, rather than using a traditional fiat banking system to complete that transaction. If I send my $1 million from my bank to your bank and my bank are going to take a huge percentage of that transaction fee, using the Swift money system, and there's taxes on either side. This decentralized banking system, which is Bitcoin or Litecoin or XRP or one of these other tokens that facilitate the same sort of transactions, it's faster, it's cheaper, and it cuts out the middlemen, which are the banks.
One thing which I thought was, which just sprang to my mind when I was watching the documentary, is I was having this conversation with an Uber driver the other night about how kind of like Uber has ended up making cabs better, because thanks to the technology which Uber brought in, now you can book a cab online through any of the firms pretty much. I think pretty much they have to survive these days. They have to be friendlier to you. They have to sort of treat you better. And I can almost see some of that starting to happen with banks. Like, you've said about the fact that Russia's looking at launching their own currency, or was it China? Sorry,
China,
pardon me.
Which Russia will probably start using because the ruble's in trouble.
Yeah. Do you think that that we're going to see this as well as cryptocurrency becomes an everyday entity for a lot of us, which it isn't at the moment, I would say? Do you think that will force the banks to treat us better, as they die out?
100%. I mean, look at what happened with the example of when Napster first came out. This disrupted the music industry. There were so many musicians that were entitled to your hard-worked money, and they expected to sell CDs for $30 to $25, and and concert tickets for way more, and everything in between in terms of merchandise, and make so much money. And really, we were being price gouged for content back then. Now you can pay $10 a month for Spotify and you have infinite music. And yes, the content creators get paid a royalty, but it's way smaller than the CD and DVD days that we grew up with, right? Banks are going to go through the same thing. The average bank, like you or I, are not probably like very sophisticated banking users that are transacting with millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars per day. At the end of the year, each bank probably charges average users like us, around $1,200 to $1,500 in fees. We don't usually see them as much, but there's monthly fees for keeping our money in their accounts. There's insurance that they're collecting, all kinds of things that they sell you on top, right? Mortgages, whatever. So they make a lot of money off of holding our money and running this system with our money that we have been working hard to use, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, they can take your money. You sign a contract with them when you allow them to use your dollars, to hold your dollars in their accounts. They can turn around. They can do sophisticated investments with your money. They can, let's say, put that into bonds, invest, stocks, whatever they want, behind your back, and they try to do it in a very stable and conservative way. So they're making a few percentages off of each user every year, but over the grand scheme of things, that adds up, and they make a lot of money off of investing your money. But you never see that. And you're also paying them that $1,200 to $1,500 in fees every year.
And that's a huge thing, by the way, with the kind of potential of the future of cryptocurrency, because how many times have we seen these banking crashes? For a little while, there's a few legislations put in place which very quickly go away, and the legislations which are put in place are very weak to what's needed. And so you see the same practices start up again. Like,
Yes,
this would take that out of it.
And case in point with Bitcoin, the whole reason this technology was launched was to have a fairer money system for the users and to innovate and add better efficiency and value for us, because it came out of the crash of 2008, the great financial crisis, where banks did all this irresponsible investment practices with the subprime mortgage crisis, insurance companies doing ridiculous things. We had Lehman Brothers go down, and Bear Stearns, and all these massive titans of industry on Wall Street. And the other ones that didn't completely crash out and die, like Bank of America or Merrill Lynch or Barclays or whatever, they got bailed out with a massive TARP government printing. And at that time, that was a huge amount of $750 billion. In the past 2 years, due to COVID, we printed and bailed out the economy, the businesses, and individuals $4.5 trillion. Okay? Way more money in the system now, and debt caused by that bailout. But what happened in 2008, they did this massive bailout, and the banks, instead of saving the average Joe like you and I and letting us work at our sector inside of this banking company, here's the money we got from the government, stay in your job, we're going to let you ride this out through this economic uncertainty, here's some money that we got from the government to protect your position, keep money coming into your household and food on your table. The banks didn't do that. For the most part, the banks fired people, kept that money to themselves, and then at the end of the year in 2009 and end of 2000, beginning of 2010, they were paying their executives massive bonuses in the figures of multiple millions, tens of millions. And so people, excuse me, were up in arms about that. And supposedly the developers of Bitcoin, they created this so that money could get out of the fiat system into this new blockchain ecosystem that's more secure and not being manipulated by the banking system. And I think it's a hopeful place. I think there's going to be opportunity for growth there.
The one thing which I was wondering about with this as well is, as much as I'm on the same page as you are with removing the banks from our money would be a wonderful thing, and removing government to the most degree. However, obviously our tax dollars or pounds or whatever denomination you're in do go towards certain services, certain kind of like ways of life for us in a kind of shared world, shall we say, or shared country. Mm-hmm. How do you replace that whilst moving forward with this new cryptocurrency, or is the way forward them all launching their own currencies?
Well, look, a lot of the countries are. I mean, the United States is working on their own digital blockchain currency. Canada is. I'm sure Australia is looking into something. The UK is probably looking into something. There has to be a better system than what we have. And I'm sure the Federal Reserve, the SEC, many of these different government bodies that are watching the economy and trying to keep the wheels on the car financially and structurally to the economy are worried. They know that there's been some moves that have been made that could end in some kind of economic and financial destruction like we saw in 2008, maybe worse. So digital currencies are an option. They're a reset, they're a reboot, they're a new launch to a financial and fairer system. The problem right now in terms of taxes, you have to look at the tax code of the country that you're in if you're going to be practicing and trading in these cryptocurrencies. So Canada actually has a CRA, Canada Revenue Agency. It's kind of like the IRS in the United States, and I'm sure there's a revenue agency in the UK.
Inland revenue, yeah.
Right. And they actually, if you go and Google Bitcoin tax law UK or Bitcoin tax law Canada or Bitcoin tax law the United States, your revenue agencies already have rules that they're operating under so that they can collect taxes from you based on your transactions in this space. And the way that they look at a lot of these cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, for example, they look at it as a asset that you can make income off of, kind of like a house. If you buy a house now, that house goes up in value 5 years from now. You sell that house and you made let's say you made a profit of 50% on the initial value of that asset. They're going to claim capital gains tax on you. Okay. And the way that works in Canada, probably works in the UK and other countries that are similar, like the United States, that capital gain tax usually works out to about 50% of your gain. So if your house goes from being $1 million to a $1.5 million, you sell it, they're going to try and claim, not on the house, but let's say the Bitcoin, they're going to claim $250,000 worth of your gain. They're going to tax that. So you have to look out for that. And I hope that the governments will become, I hope they do regulate the crypto industry, because right now, like I said earlier, it is the Wild West. It is a place where there's some fraudulent activity going on, some very delinquent activity going on, but there's still promise and new technologies that are popping up that are going to offer efficiency and benefit to the overall economies.
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating thing. Just to kind of wrap this up, is the idea of this new technology we're using and all these gatekeepers it gets rid of, but still building it into a system that we know, so people know how to operate it, but also that pays into systems for things we like about those systems. And I think that's a compromise which we're working towards. Thank you so much for joining us, for talking about this. It's been absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And, I hope people get something out of watching the documentary. If some of your users are in the United States, Canada, or Australia, they can watch it for free on a streaming platform owned by Fox called TUBITV.com. It's also available on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, and Google Play and stuff like that. So please check it out. I have a whole catalog of documentaries on those platforms. You can search my name, Darcy Weir, and appreciate people's feedback.
Thank you so much. And this week on the radio show, in celebration of our interview all about Bitcoin, we're going to be doing a musical theme on money. Have you got any track based on money you'd like to hear for this interview?
I guess
just while I think about that, I'm doing my usual bang up job of getting to mention to the guest that I'm going to ask this at the end and then putting them on the spot. And I'm just saying this just to give them a second to think about it, because I'm awful.
Well, you know what? If there's a famous song that I like, I don't know who sings it. I know it's like more of a funk band, like more of a Motown sort of era band. But the song "Money, Money, Money, Money," some people, got to have it. Some people really want it. Like that song describes the evils of money, and
It does
there you
indeed.
go.
And I mean, I'm sure there's no link here, but it was used a lot by Trump on his Apprentice show. No link at all, I'm sure.
Yeah, the evils of Trump right there. But whatever. Let's not get political.
Hey. Darcy said that. I'm keeping neutral, of course. Thank you very much for joining me, Darcy. Again, pleasure as always. Can't wait to talk to you about whatever documentary you come up with next. Please
Thank
take
you,
care.
sir. Thank you, Doctor.
I'm Dr. Squee. That has been my show. And in a world where you can be literally anything, please be kind.